팀 버너스-리 경을 일단 화면으로 먼저 만나보시겠습니다. 보시죠.
1999년 타임지가 선정한 이 시점이 가장 중요한 100대 인물 중 한 명. 2007년 영국 텔레그래프지가 선정한 이 시대 최고의 천재 100인 공동 1위. 2007년 영국 왕실로부터 문화 분야 최고상인 메리트 훈장 수여. 1991년 월드와이드웹 기술을 개발하여 세상 사람들에게 열린 인터넷의 세상을 선물한 팀 버너스-리. 인류의 소통에 가장 크게 기여한 한 사람으로 존경받고 있다. 서울 디지털 포럼 10주년을 위해 최초 공식 방한. 인터넷의 아버지 팀 버너스-리가 이야기하는 디지털시대의 초심력. 그 깊고 넓은 이야기가 시작됩니다.
버너스-리 경을 무대로 모셔서 여러분들께 들려줄 수 있는 기조연설 말씀 한번 들어보겠습니다. 자, 팀 버너스-리 경 나와주시죠.
Thank you. My name is you're welcome. Use it anytime. It's great to be here. First time in Seoul. It's an honor to be able to open the 10th anniversary version of this forum. Collaboration. And I'm going to talk to you about collaboration. That's, for me, it's very appropriate because the web was for collaboration. It's about collaboration. Before I talk to you about collaboration, I'm going to talk to you about creativity. Creativity for me is one of those really magical things. Well, people collaborating is one of the magical things that make life work. And what happens inside your own brain? Let's start with that. Let's start with the problem. When, there you are, maybe you haven't really realized you have a problem, maybe you have, but you're looking for a solution, you need a solution. And inside your head are all the pieces. Sometimes you don't know that they're all in there. Sometimes you are trying to find the pieces. But one of the interesting things I think about our brain is that as we're going through that process of trying to put together the pieces to make the puzzle, it's a subconscious process. And sometimes we're not even thinking about the problem. We're in the bath, we're taking a shower, we're thinking about something else, and then click, something is inside our brains. It happens. We put those two pieces together. And I think when you ask people, why did you come up with that problem? How did you find the solution? If they try to tell you, well, don't believe them, because they don't know. Because none of us really know. None of us can see that process. It's a subconscious process. So it seems to us to be magic. And for me, that's one of the just great things about, for example, about being artistic or about being musical or about programming or about designing systems. So is that process by which you put those first two pieces together and then bit by bit, given those two pieces, you put together the rest of the solution. But that's not what we're talking about today. And that's not why I made the World Wide Web. The reason that I found I had to design the World Wide Web 20 years ago is that we have a different solution. We have lots of people. We have people all over the world. And I don't have all the solutions in my head. I may have some. I may have a piece of the solution. But we have all these people around the world have different pieces of the puzzle in their head. So, the challenge that I wanted to meet with the World Wide Web is that we can find a solution under these situations where a half-formed idea in my head and a half-formed idea in your head can be put together to find a solution when you and I are on opposite sides of the world. So, here was the plan. The plan for the World Wide Web was it should be a space in which all the half-formed ideas and the partly formed ideas and the fully formed ideas are all out there in this hypertext space. The idea was it would be a very collaborative medium. The original idea was that I could, for example, if I'm designing a project, I was working at CERN, a big particle physics lab, I wanted to design a project, and I had pieces of it in my head. I just put it in the web, and anybody who joined the project would be able to join, look at the World Wide Web, and see. I wouldn't have, when I bring people on board, students come for the summer, they could just figure out what's going on. If you like, it was a two-way system. It was a sort of equilibrium. There was an equilibrium in that whenever I had an idea, which was not in the web, I could very easily put it in the web. So my ideas could go from me to the web very easily. And also, when I'm browsing around the web and I see an interesting idea, the web is very intuitive, I can pick it up very easily. So I and the web are in equilibrium. Ideas flow easily backwards and forwards. And if you and the web are in equilibrium, then through the web, you and I are in equilibrium. We're working on a project. We're thousands of miles away. We may be on different time zones. But because we're constantly updating this web, that we end up sharing all the same ideas. That was the goal. That through that we should be able to put together the pieces and eventually end up putting together the design solving the problem. So that, if you like, was the goal. Now, who here was alive in 1989? Yeah, some people, we were alive in 1989. Many of you maybe have been alive in 1989, but many young people nowadays don't remember really. But when you explain about the web to young people nowadays, then it's difficult to explain what it was like before the ability to click from one page to another. Because now young people grow up with it. But back then, I was working as a software engineer. I was working at CERN, the High Energy Physics Lab in Geneva. Wonderful place. We had the internet. The internet had just become available when I invented the web. And there was a serious need. CERN is a very big organization. It has big projects. It has an accelerator, which you may have heard of recently. You've heard of the LHC, you've heard of the Higgs boson. All that excitement, that comes from a more recent accelerator than the one I was working on. When I was working on, though they were building, were devices like this, huge pieces of electronics, all built by people who come from different parts of the world. So the interesting thing about it was that the people who came from different parts of the world, there was no military regime to tell them they should all use the same computers. So they all came using different computers, and they had their information stored on different documentation systems. So when you try it, like me, a software engineer, I'm trying to help, I'm trying to get my program to talk to this device, I'm trying to get into this piece, then I had to go and find all these people. I had to learn how to use all their different computers. So it was really hard to get work done. And after a while of dealing with all these different computer systems to get information out of them, all the different places that people had information stored, I thought, okay, as a physicist, I thought, I can generalize this. I'd been trained as a physicist. Physicists generalize. They look at a specific example, they think, what's the general case? So I thought, what's the general case of all these systems? The first attempt I had at writing a program was actually back in 1980, before the internet. This is a program I wrote on a computer when computer screens looked like this, with just rows of characters. But you can see this is a simple program which stores information about things and links them together, the numbered things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, those are links. And you had to type in a number to follow a link to another page. So it was a little like the World Wide Web. But I had no Windows, and I had no internet. The internet, back in those days, hadn't spread. It wasn't really available. And, even though it had been invented, it wasn't available to me. So, as time went on, I felt that it was really important to design this. But CERN is a place where you do physics experiments. It's not a software organization. So, but somebody suggested that I should write a memo about the World Wide Web idea. I did. This is the diagram I put on the front. The diagram shows how I think about relationships of things to things, of links. The project is in the middle. Then I call it mesh. Later I call it the World Wide Web. As it happens, I never actually got permission really to work on the web, except that my manager, Mike Sendel, he said at one point, well, Tim, you have this new Next machine. The Next machine was a black box. Does anybody remember the Next computer? Anybody remember that? Yeah, a few nods. The Next machine was a beautiful machine. Steve Jobs made it when he left Apple before he went back. And a lot of the modern Macs actually are based on the Next. So I had this beautiful black cube. And he said, let's try it out. It's supposed to be a very good platform for developing things. Why don't you test it? Why don't you test it out on, say, that hypertext project you were talking about? So with a wink in his eye, he said, he gave me permission effectively to go and work on the hypertext project, just as a way of testing out the Next machine. So I wrote, this was in September of 1990, I wrote a web browser. This is what it looked like. Although the very first Next was black and white, this is what it looks like on a color screen. When you click on a link, it will actually put up a different window. And you can see this is some pages about CERN, including some graphics about this experiment. You can see it's pretty much basically like the web browsers we have today. In that time, the language which made web pages, which I invented, was actually much simpler than the one we have today. But that's the first web browser, and lots of people copied it and made other web browsers in time. And now there's a whole lot of you have to choose between, like Firefox and Internet Explorer and Chrome and Opera and so on, and 5 browsers in Chinese in China, because I may not be able to pronounce. So those are exciting times. I also, of course, wrote the web server software. The web works by having browser software on your computer and server software running on the website. So the first website I launched, it was info.cern.ch. And just yesterday, CERN, who owns that domain name, put some of the original web pages from that first website up on there. So you can go to info.cern.ch and look at some of the very first web pages. The load on that server, the number of people looking at that server per day, started off as about 10 or 100. Here's a graph of how over 3 years it went from being 10 to 100 hits to being 100,000 hits. So you can see that it's every year 10 times the load on the server. And that was just one server. That was the load on the first web server. Meanwhile, all over the web, all over the world, people are putting up web servers, sending me an email. So this took off very, very solidly as an exponential explosion. All the time, it was very hard work. What should I do every morning when I got up? Should I write more code? Should I give a talk about the web? Should I write email? Should I persuade somebody else to write some code? Should I persuade somebody else to put up a new web server? All these different things to do. Somehow, after a while, it became not just my problem, but the problem of more and more people who joined me. And they joined me as volunteers. If you want an example of collaboration, this was a wonderful one. It was an international collaboration. I found messages. I'd get an email from somebody saying they just thought the web sounded like such a good idea. They put up a web server with some crazy content. It's probably nobody would be interested. But anyway, here's the address. Here's the URL. Here's the URL of my new web server. So I got a list. And at one point, I had a list of the first 26 websites. Now, no one has a list of all the websites. You can't make it. Those were exciting days. And around, as a few years went by 1994, it got to the point where the web was picking up speed and we really needed to steer it. The companies involved, they came to me and expressed that we really had to take control of it. I don't know has anybody been on a bobsled team? And not a lot of people. Yeah, anybody been on a bobsled team? I haven't, but it felt like this. You know, with a bobsled, you push and you push and you push, and at first it goes slowly and then it's going faster, and there's a certain point when you have to get in. And for the web, you had to get in. 1993, 1994, we produced the World Wide Web Consortium. So the World Wide Web Consortium is a W3.org. It's a non-national body, not involved with countries. There are people all over the world involved. It's sponsored by companies, but lots of individuals are involved with it. Here was a Keynote office. Kim Chung-Lee is leads that office at ETRI in Korea, and SK and Samsung and LG and large companies that you've heard of, small companies are involved, but also lots and lots of people, just individuals and people in universities, all working hard in this consortium to continue the technology, to build the technology. So, and now this bobsled has gone, it's gone a long way, and it's still, and it's going faster and faster. HTML5 is a new version of HTML. HTML5 is not just a markup language for web pages, it's a computing platform. Because a web page now is moved from being a document to being a program. In the early days, a web page was just a document. It was static. Now, it's a program. And now, increasingly, the technology for a web page, or web apps, as we call them, a web app can be as powerful as a phone app. And in fact, if you're thinking that your organization needs a phone app, think first about making it as a web app. Because if you make it as a web page, then it'll run on any machine. And also, there's a problem with phone apps. If I find something interesting on my phone, then if it's on a phone app, it doesn't have a URL. It doesn't have one of those things that starts http:// etc. So if I find something on the web, I can tweet it. I can email it. I can show you about it. We can all get involved in the discussion about it. When something's on the web, it's part of human discourse. It's part of human discussion. It's part of the big democratic process we're building up there. If you make something on a phone app, it is. So I encourage you to use web apps rather than phone apps. What do I encourage you to do with it? Well, to collaborate. We need collaboration now in the world more than we needed collaboration back then, in a way. Yes, CERN was a big challenge. CERN was a microcosm. CERN had global issues. It had the problem of people being distributed globally. It had some big problems. But now we globally have problems which are huge. As the Prime Minister mentioned, the problems like global warming, the problems of income disparity. We have the problems of understanding cancer, understanding Alzheimer's disease. These are massive problems where we have this need to put your brain together and my brain together across the internet. We need much more powerful tools. We need to use them for solving these big scientific problems. We need them also for creating new governance systems. The organizations on the internet, things like the WPC, the Internet Engineering Task Force, ICANN, they have built, if you like, their own governance systems, which are not based on nations. There are all kinds of different new governance systems are being produced. So that may be a key to us managing the planet in a better way. But if there's one thing that I think that we need to do with this collaboration, one thing that we can do with the web, but a lot of us are not doing yet, And that is, we need to use these tools, we need to use these collaborative tools to cross that cultural boundary. When I communicate with you, if offline you email me and we start our conversation, we will have maybe a language barrier. If we didn't have this translator, to whom much thanks, then those of you who don't understand English wouldn't be able to understand. So we have a language barrier. But in a way, we have translators. Maybe in the future we'll have some machine translators to help us. We have other problems. We have the time difference. If we want to have a meeting, somebody's going to be fast asleep in bed when we want to have a meeting if we involve people from all around the world. We have the problems of the time it takes to travel. But main problem is the cultural problem. The main problem is that if you and I go on the internet, and we tend to go and talk to our friends. We tend to talk to people of the same culture. We tend not to spend the time when we're connected to the internet to understand the people who are from a different religion. We don't tend to use it to understand why the people whose children, our children, may go out to bomb in their fighter planes. We don't understand. We don't spend the time trying to understand how they think. So I think one of our biggest challenges, the big challenge of collaboration, is working across, as though the national boundaries didn't work, to break down those barriers, to get so that we actually understand how the other people think, as well as being able to solve the big problems of the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
네, 팀 버너스 의견 감사합니다. 인터넷 아버지답게 마지막에 말씀하신 문화를 넘어서서 서로 이해하려는 노력, 그걸 통한 협력, 가장 중요하다는 말씀 잘 들었습니다. 자, 지금부터 팀 버너스-리 경과 함께 좀 더 깊은 얘기를 한번 나눠보겠습니다. 협력의 장을 만들기 위해서 앱을 만들었다고, 웹을 만들었다고 이렇게 말씀을 하셨는데 아주 감동 깊게 들었습니다. 간단한 질문부터 드리겠습니다. 웹을 주로 어떤 용도로 사용하시는지, 그 다음에 가장 많이 들어가는 웹사이트는 어딘지.
Well, actually, that's easy because when we started the Web Consortium, we ate our own dog food, if you like. We used our own technology. So I made the rules. Everything that we discuss when you're developing web standards, and you're talking about a document, if it's not on the web, it doesn't exist. That's the rule. So everything works on the web. All the minutes of our meetings are taken, they're taken using Internet VHR, they're on the web. So the website I use most is wc.org, and I use it, we have every part of the way the consortium works, both the internal staff, the way the member organizations meet, and so on, and all the working group stuff is out there on the web. And that's the rule, because it's only fair so that anybody in the Korean high school who's interested in the web can then just go to the wc.org and can get involved.
알겠습니다. 저는 인터넷에서 못 찾겠는 것도 많겠다고 생각했었는데 꼭 그건 아니라고 말씀하신 걸로 듣겠습니다. 자, 잘 아시다시피 한국의 초고속 통신망 거의 세계 최고입니다. 그건 잘 알고 계시죠?
83%.
오케이, 그렇습니다. 그런데 그렇다고 해서 우리나라 사람들이, 한국 사람들이 과연 월드와이드 웹을 제대로 잘 사용하고 있는지 좀 의문이 들 때가 많습니다. 이상한 그 웹사이트만 찾아다니고 그런 경우도 많고요. 그래서 과연 어떻게 웹을 사용하는 게 바람직한 건지 한번 설명해 주시겠습니다.
I think, well, there's two parts to that question. I think the best way to use the web is to nurture a good set of bookmarks, good places to start. And I think when people started initially using the web, they were so excited that you could get anything. They then went and thought they should read everything. So they spent their time in the middle of the night surfing and surfing and surfing, always so excited that every time you click on a link you find a new web page. This is no longer exciting. Okay, now today's people who use the web today, they keep some bookmarks, and the bookmarks point to pages which are produced by organizations which they respect, organizations, individuals who may spend their time making lists of good things to read. So you go to, it may be a newspaper on the web, you go to, it may be a blog, it may be a particular website of a group, it may be a collaborative website, but by nurturing the web, these bookmarks are good places to start, then people have a good experience and they find truth rather than junk on the web. And you just remember that if you browse and you find yourself reading something which is horrible or ghastly or garbage, don't do it again. Don't follow that link. Don't use that source of links.
알겠습니다. 자, 그럼 웹에서 한 단계 좀 진전했어요. 요즘은 소셜 네트워크 서비스의 시대입니다. 트위터, 페이스북, 누구나 소셜 네트워크 서비스 SNS를 많이 사용을 하는데 과연 이 SNS들이 웹 생태계에서는 어떤 역할을 할 수 있다고 보십니까?
I think that one of the interesting things about the social networks is that obviously they provide a very valuable, I think they provide a valuable function in connecting people together. Also, they allow us to capture our lives. One of the things that they do is they capture what we call the semantics. They capture the meaning of lives. So if you go to a social networking site and you say that this person is in this picture, or you say that you invite these people to a party, then the social network site has got a lot of data about you. So one of the things they're doing is collecting a lot of data. Now some people are worried about the data being abused. But one of the valuable things that it do is that they then know a lot about you, so they can serve you. So we're moving towards a future when programs out there on the web will be know a lot more about me, and still they'll be able to serve me better, be able to understand what I need better.
알겠습니다. 자, 아까도 기조 연설에서 말씀하신 것 중에서 웹 앱과 폰 앱의 차이 뭐 이런 말씀을 하셨는데 사실 따져보면 요즘은 사람들이 얘기할 때 웹의 시대는 가고 앱의 시대가 왔다. 저도 개인적으로 뭐 인터넷이나 SNS 같은 거 사용할 때 이제 점점 웹보다는 앱을 사용하는 경우가 훨씬 더 많아지고 있단 말입니다. 과연 웹의 시대가 가고 앱의 시대가 오는 게 맞다고 보십니까?
I think it's a passing it's a passing phase. So two things are happening. The moment if you try to build a web app, if you're looking at building a phone app, or should I build a phone app or a web app? The web app is not at the moment as powerful. If you want to use, for example, the accelerometer, so that in the phone that allows you to detect it, to respond to somebody waving the phone, then it's easier to do that on a phone app. But all the power of the phone app is coming to the person building the web app. So in WPC, right now, there's things called the system API for the technologists out there, which other APIs in the phone are making the web app more powerful. So the web app is starting to compete more and more. And of course, the web app has a great advantage that when you build a web app, it runs on every phone, it runs on every tablet, on every computer. So the possibility is a great advantage. So I think as it becomes more powerful, then we will see, over the next few years, we'll see that you're using web apps, but you may not realize. Because they'll act like phone apps. You'll install them. If you go to the Financial Times now, if you use it works just like a phone app, but in fact it's a web app.
알겠습니다. 자, 질문의 내용을 좀 바꿔볼까요? 아까 말씀하신 전 시절부터 그런 얘기를 하셨던 걸로 알고 있는데 아이들한테 어렸을 때부터 컴퓨터 언어를 가르쳐야 된다 이렇게 말씀하셨던 걸로 기억을 하고 있습니다. 왜 그래야 된다고 생각하십니까?
Well, if you like, there are two digital divides. If you, yes, in one of the digital divides in Korea is between people who don't have connection to the web. But then, of the people who do have connectivity and use the web, let's take a poll. How many people in the audience have written a program in their lives? Any program for any computer? Let's have a look. Yeah, some of you are minority. Those of you who have written, who know how to program a computer, you understand the power of it. That you have a much greater power than the people who don't. So yes, I think, well, it's very important. By the way, it's very important for girls to teach girls about engineering, and we need more girls in engineering and computing. But in general, we need more people to programming. Partly because there is a lot of programming to do. To make these collaborative systems, we need a lot of people who are smart and good. And there's going to be a lot of important work to be done. But also, even if you're in government, in the future, we need people in government who can program, who understand about it. Some people get into government by getting a law degree, for example, so they know how to do law. We'll need people in government who've done computing degrees, so that they know how to program, so that they understand what's possible from a computer. Because when you make laws which affect what can you do with a computer, you have to really understand what's possible. Not just what's possible with existing computers, but what you can imagine doing.
알겠습니다. 그냥 웃자고 하는 얘기지만 우리나라에서는 여학생들도 공대를 많이 가려고 하기 때문에 굳이 열심히 가르치려고 할 필요는 없는 것 같습니다. 일부 사람들이 얘기는 합니다만은 인간관계의 중요한 매개체가 거의 다 인터넷으로 돼가고 있는 거 아니에요? 그러니까 그냥 이렇게 마주보고 대화를 한다든지 서로 손을 잡고 서로의 온기를 느낀다든지 이런 게 아니라 인터넷으로만 모든 것을 대화를 인간관계를 이어가는 그런 세상이 되어버렸는데 그에 대해서 걱정하는 목소리도 많단 말이죠. 걱정을 해야 될 것 같습니까? 아니면 인터넷의 아버지로서 걱정할 필요가 없다고 보십니까?
Actually, I think there are lots of concerns with the way people end up running their lives with modern technology. I think some people do a better job than others. But I don't have the concern that we will end up just not doing things face to face. I think the human need to sit down with people, to meet one-on-one, the human need to be with another special person, or the human need to meet around a table and eat and drink together, for example, is, and I understand that in Korea as well, you're very advanced in your culture when it comes to eating and drinking around tables as well. So you're good at that technology too. That's very important. I think that human urge and ability to communicate sort of body to body across a table is very core thing, and I don't think it's going away.
인간관계와 관련해서 좀 더 말씀을 여쭤보면은 아까 기조연설에서 말씀하실 때도 이 콜라보레이션, 협력을 위해서 우리가 문화의 격차도 넘어서야 된다, 서로 대화하려고 노력해야 한다 이런 말씀이 있었는데 그 문화의 격차를 극복하기 위해서 웹이 할 수 있는 역할이 있다면 어떤 게 있을 수 있을까요?
Well, the web by itself provides you with the ability to make connections outside the country. So initially, all of our organizations are organized around the town, around the locality, around the city, around the geographical space, around the nation, around the region. And because travel is so difficult, that is where all the educational connections were done, where the knowledge flowed, as well as the government. Now you have the ability, if you want to be in, say, suppose you want to join 5 groups, you want to be a member of 5 groups, 5 different societies. They may be a professional society, maybe things would be fun. Now you can join a society of people who are interested in the same thing as you. Some obscure type of animal, perhaps, or interested in elephants, say. You could be joining people interested in elephants all around the world. And so that gives you the ability to build interconnecting organizations. Now, if we have enough interconnecting organizations, then when one person is getting very angry about another country, for example, then maybe another person close to them will say, wait, I know some of these people. Some of my elephant friends are in that country. Okay, and so I know that they're not unreasonable. I know that they won't attack us. I know that even though what they said may seem angry, or may get us angry. In fact, maybe we should go and ask them what they meant. So this effort, it takes a lot of effort to go and ask somebody of a different culture what we know. Very often when they say something, we misunderstand it. So what it takes is not just the web. The web is there, you can connect to other people. It takes effort, you have to learn other languages. Thank you all the people in Korea who, for example, are learning English. That's a really important part of it. But it takes a lot of effort, the time, to go and ask you, wait a moment, I was really upset by what you said. What did you really mean? Tell me what about your culture makes you think that? What makes you think that we're so aggressive, for example? So it takes energy, the breaking down barriers, and maybe also it takes the new forms of social network which will encourage us to do this. Because at the moment, mostly we use our social networks to talk to people who are very, very similar to ourselves.
웹은 좋은 장을 마련해 줄 수 있지만 정말로 필요한 콜라보레이션을 위해서 정말로 필요한 것은 우리들 스스로의 노력이다. 서로 더 다가가려는 노력이다. 그렇게 이해를 하면 될 것 같습니다. 좀 더 큰 얘기로 넘어가겠습니다. 웹을 만듦으로 해서 세상을 바꿨습니다. 본인 스스로 그러셨잖아요. 다음에 이렇게 크게 세상을 한번 바꿀 만한 혁신은 뭐가 올 거라고 생각하십니까?
Well, let me tell you about platforms, the technology platforms. The internet was a technology platform. It was invented in 1969 by Berners-Lee. And when they invented it, they didn't know they hadn't had the idea of the web. But they built the technology, they built the internet to be a very, very open platform. So they built it so it could be used for anything. 20 years later, I am using the internet, I'm sending email, but there's no web. So I designed the web as a platform. The idea of the web as a platform is it should be very open. It should not, the web is not designed for any particular application. That's very important. So the reason why we've seen such a huge explosion of different sorts of websites is the web is also a big stable platform. Now on top of the web, we've built the open web platform, which is the web app platform. So we've got this another platform built on platform, built on platform, built on platform. So what we'll see in the future is new things built on the platforms. So, the internet still uses the sort of telecommunications ideas which were invented ages ago. But those are now, so what will happen is that it won't be that the web will disappear, but that the new ideas will create new systems which we build using the web, built on top of the web. They'll be built, and they'll be built, maybe somebody who's listening to this right now will go out and use the open web platform and use it to build the next platform. And when they do it, I want them to remember not to just make a very, very cool application, but when they really have a world-changing idea, make it an open platform, and also make sure that, like the internet and the web, that it's royalty-free. That we don't have to pay royalties for patents in it.
모든 사람이 함께 다 이용할 수 있게 해줘야 된다는 뜻을 뵙겠습니다. 자, 이 창조 경제라는 말 들어보셨는지 모르겠어요. 요즘 우리나라에서는 이 창조 경제 생태계를 만들려는 노력이 진행이 되고 있습니다. 사실 인터넷이라는 것 자체도, 웹 자체도 사실 이 창조 경제와 관련된 생태계를 제공하는 일종의 플랫폼이라고 생각할 수가 있는데, 창조 경제를 잘하려면 어떻게 해야 될지 아이디어가 있으십니까?
Well, by the way, if you want to look at where Korea is on using the web effectively, which I think is a lot of us, if you go to the Web Index, so the World Wide Web Foundation, not the consortium, but the foundation which is more recent, created the webindex.org. And when you go there, you can see Korea, I think, is 13th. Now, you'd expect Korea to be very high on the web index because it has great connectivity. So when you go there, you can see the sorts of things. So just by looking at the web index has got inputs of lots of different numbers and lots of different things. It's about whether there's content in your language. So one of the things, make sure that the Korean language economy. If you find something in Wikipedia, many of you will be able to just go with your language skills and look it up in English. But also you make sure that it's described as available in Korean to keep so that for those who only have Korean, they can have the language available. And also so that the Korean culture is kept alive. So I think that's very important. So it's not all about technology, it's also about art, science, dance, and drama. So make sure for Korea to thrive as a country on the web, all that Korean culture also should be represented on the web.
저희 서울 디지털 포럼 2013의 주제가 collaboration, 초협력이라는 그런 단어를 저희가 만들어냈는데 혹시 이 웹세상을 보시면서 그런 초협력적인 사례가 웹세상 안에서 지금 벌어지고 있는 것 또는 벌어질 가능성이 있어 보이는 사례들을 혹시 소개해 주실 수 있겠습니까?
Well, okay, so I just started giving a talk for 20 minutes about how the whole purpose of the web is in collaboration. So if you like, yes, so lots of stuff that's happening on the web, I think, is good examples. There are different genres of things. Originally, unfortunately, historically, the web took off as just a publication medium. Because that was just the way it happened to take off very quickly. So a lot of people who used the web early on, they just thought it was like a television, but you could click, they sat in front of it. But then we had blogs. Then people, wikis and blogs both came out. So blogs, an example, if you like, of people being able to contribute. What's much more, what I think is more interesting is when you have a web page where in real time you can share a document. So I can edit the document and you can immediately see my change and you can immediately change it. I like it when I'm in a meeting and somebody is taking a record of the meeting. They're taking the meeting minutes, the minutes of the meeting. And I can see them in real time. I can look at them on my screen so that I'm talking and somebody has been scribing, has been writing down what I've said and they've got it wrong and I can immediately correct that. I like tools like collaboration tools like so that not only is the transcript of the meeting is going by, but whenever somebody mentions something out there, they mention a website, they mention a source, they mention a source of information, they drop it into, they put the URL into the transcript, so immediately everybody who's following the meeting can follow it. So the sorts of collaboration tools I'd like to see much more powerful ones. One of the things I'd like to do is to see tools to support politics, for example. I'd like to see tools for political debate, where when you put forward, you put out a proposition, and then somebody argues with it, and somebody else argues against it, and you see this argument between different political groups. You have a website where you can go and you can challenge it. You say, well, you quoted this as a fact. You said, Korea has 83% penetration. Well, can you justify that figure? And then they on the website, they can say, yes, okay, we'll justify it. Here's the link. And here's a link to the justifying. And then so that after a while, people start to take the arguments that we've gone over again and again and start to become very rational about it. And informed, so that the people who are voting, for politicians, when they look at these arguments, they can really test them, and the people, the academics who understand it, can challenge the politicians. So that I think certainly in some of the countries I know best, the political debate has become too much of just a shouting match. So I think some collaborative tools to bring it back down to more scientific debate would be a very good idea.
그러려면 정치인들이 아주 웹서핑을 잘해야 될 것 같은데 실제로 이 정치 분야에서 그런 뭐 비슷하게 그렇게 정치 분야에서 이렇게 비슷한 그 웹을 통한 콜라보레이션이 가능한 사례가 조금이라도 접근한 사례가 있습니까?
Well, certainly you've seen the elections in the US. Most people feel that Barack Obama's election happened because of a lot of collaboration happening on the internet. That the fundraising on the internet and the organization of the whole collaboration on the internet. I think that also his policies were put together and groups meeting on the internet. And so now I think that's becoming a model of how that you reach out to people, a large number of people, that you reach on the internet instead of just talking to a few powerful people. You talk to a very large number of people.
고맙습니다. 자, 마지막으로 한 가지 질문만, 정말 큰 질문입니다만은 앞으로 다가올 새로운 인터넷 세상에, 네트워크 세상에 대해서 정말 바라는 거 하나 있다면은 뭐라고 말씀하실 수가 있겠습니까?
Hi. What do I hope for? I hope for world peace. That's easy. Here is a beauty queen, I would know that. That was the most important thing to hope for. But how do we even know? So what's the little goals that we'll get to that? I'm tremendously optimistic about humanity. The web is humanity connected by technology. The web is people, it's not web pages. It's people communicating using technology. What do we need to do that? I think we need to allow people to communicate. What's really important is that we don't allow governments or companies to block the internet or to spy on the internet. Thank you. So wherever you go, whenever you use the web, remember that you should make sure, always check the laws in your country. Make sure that the government is not setting itself up to be able to block the internet, that it's not setting itself up to be able to spy on the internet. So that when you use the internet as a human being, as a citizen, as an individual human being, you have that as a human right, just to be able to communicate me with you across the internet with nobody spying on us and nobody blocking us. I think if we have that, if we guarantee the openness and the neutrality of the internet, then I trust humanity to organize itself, to collaborate, to do e-collaboration, and get that world peace thing too.
궁금한 내용도 많고 저희가 준비한 질문도 많습니다만 시간상 여기서 드려야 될 것 같습니다. 저희가 질문 던질 때마다 열정적으로 답변해 주시는 데 대해서 감사드립니다. 다시 한번 박수 부탁드립니다.